Evening, everyone. Welcome to the Balls Out podcast and a very special Easter Thursday edition of the show as we welcome Paul from FC United of Manchester. We were just talking backstage here. This is a very special show because we've been trying to get this on air since Christmas Eve last year. So it's a long time in the making. So Paul, we've no pressure here. We've got to make this live up to the expectations. So how are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Yeah, Christmas to Easter, there must be some kind of tale in that. But yeah, no, I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no worries, mate. No worries. Look, I mean, a few facts I'll just throw here because, believe it or not, I was talking to a work colleague. He's only 19 years of age, so probably no surprise. He's a Man United fan, and he had never heard of FC United Manchester. So, in case we have other likewise Man United fans out there listening, FC United Manchester currently in the seventh tier of the English Football League system. Opened their ground Broadhurst Park in 2015. And I found this very interesting, the third largest fan owned football club in the United Kingdom, which is very interesting. I'm sure we'll get onto that later on as we talk about more things. But Paul, just yourself, what's your current role in the club and how long have you been associated with the club?
Yep. So I've been involved with the club since it was founded. So previously, I was involved in the protests against the Glazer takeover at Old Trafford back in 2005 and the lead up to that. When that happened, I was kind of one of the ones who gave up my season ticket and went along to FC United. So I've been involved since day one, volunteering in different roles over the years. So I'm currently a board member at the club. So that doesn't mean I've got any money. It just means we're 100% fan owned club. So to be on our board, you've got to be a member of the club, and you're elected by your fellow fans. So yeah, I've been on the board for about 18 months now.
Lovely, lovely. And just going back to that in 2005, because I remember it myself, I was only 15 at the time, but I remember at the time the takeover obviously happened, and then you guys went your separate ways. But there was a lot of tarnishing done at the time. I think you guys were kind of made out to be the bad guys at the time. That was certainly my interpretation of some of the media and stuff that was out there. And obviously we didn't have the social media influence that we have now, where you guys could have got your side across. So like, just talk me through that at the time, because like you've walked away from one of the biggest and most successful clubs at the time. It wasn't an easy decision.
No, really, really difficult. I mean, I grew up about less than a mile from Old Trafford. That's where I grew up as a kid. There, I had a season ticket at Old Trafford. Obviously, was involved in those protests. The idea of FC United was one that was mooted in the build up to that takeover actually happening, and that was for me the route that I felt was right. I think realised, quite early on that the Glazers are not people who care about banners being held up against them or songs being sung about them. They care about money. That's what they've always cared about. You look at their business history and you look at what they've done for 20 years since. So the idea of FC United was for people who felt that they couldn't or they didn't want to give their money to the Glazer family any longer, to have an alternative of where they could watch football on a Saturday afternoon with like-minded United fans. Not everyone agreed with that. We did have a groundswell of support to start with, but in terms of probably the numbers that it would have taken to make a real difference of getting the Glazers out, maybe it was never there. And I understand that it's difficult, particularly if you've had a season ticket that's maybe been in the family for generations, and that's just what you do on a Saturday. People weren't ready to make that decision. For me, it was never about lecturing people, saying, "Oh, you must do this," and that's never what FC United has been about. I mean, in any fan base, you'll probably get some people there who'll have those opinions, going, "Oh, well, you should have given up your season ticket, and it would have made all the difference." But as a club, and for most of us, we recognise how difficult that decision was. I went ahead with that, and I've kind of been involved ever since. And you're right in what you say; it was quite acrimonious. Some of those early years. There was the example of Alex Ferguson being asked about a press conference at the end of the 2005-06 season, which was our first season where we won the Northwest Counties League, and he was asked by a journalist whether he wanted to congratulate us and our manager, who'd as a kid he'd been in sort of associated with United there, and it didn't get a very pleasant response. He wasn't too pleased with the question. And so, some of the issues between fans, we did have, we had epithets thrown at us of, "Oh, you've given up on your club" and so on. And I think it's just different. We never saw it like that. I don't think probably most people saw it like that. I think even if they weren't ready to make that decision of going with FC United, I think they understand why those of us who did made that decision. And since then, there are people in 20 years who've probably since gone on to, they've either made that decision that it's no longer for them, of whether they don't enjoy the experience or they don't feel like they want to give the money to the Glazers anymore after seeing what they've done for the club, or whether they've had that decision made for them with ticket price increases that they can't afford to go anymore. And some may have come along to FC United. We've seen that a lot of other people might have gone and watched other non-league clubs that are local to them. I think we've seen a boom in non-league, and it's no coincidence that that's been alongside all of the issues that we're seeing in top flight football over the last few years.
Yeah, no, man, you're spot on there. Look, I think it's only time has kind of proven how right you guys were really about the Glazers. Because I think at the time they got a lot of protection from Sir Alex Ferguson. They were kind of, what would you say, cloaked in protection by the success at the time, and right up until Fergie left in 2013, they were kind of I know there was some protests in between that, even when Fergie was still there, but they were certainly protected by him. And I think now we really are seeing the state of the club as a result of their complete mismanagement. I mean, as it is now, the rules and regulations that have been brought into English football since the takeover that they introduced in 2005 is actually illegal. It's not allowed in English football anymore. So it'll tell you how poisonous that takeover was back then. But in terms of your guys' side of things, was there much dialogue with the club at the time, face to face, before you finally got to that line and you went your separate ways? Was there much kind of back and forth between the club, or were the club even facilitating any sort of talks back then?
I think in the build-up, there were people within the club making the right noises. So, David Gill, being chief executive at the time, he was initially against. He was speaking out against the Glazers at the time. I think his famous quote, "Debt is the road to ruin," and so on. And there probably was that relationship there. The one I remember. So I was involved with IMUSA, the Independent Manchester United Supporters Association. They were formed in 1995 around. Kind of originally formed around the issue of persistent standing in the ground, and there's threats from the council of people being thrown out, and that kind of morphed into the campaign against Murdoch in 1998-99, and then onto the Glazer campaign. And IMUSA's 10th anniversary dinner party was in I think it was January or February 2005, and Sir Alex Ferguson was the keynote speaker at that. And we were told at the time, sort of saying, look, Alex can't say too much because of all the legal stuff that's going on there, but the fact that he's here should show that what he thinks of what's going on. And that was kind of it. I think once the takeover happened, things very much changed. And I think you're right that a lot of what helped the Glazers in those early years, that they were still successful under Fergie. That bought them, I think, quite a lot of time. As you say, now we're 20 years on, and I think everything that we said about what the Glazers would do to the club has come true. We don't take, certainly for FC United or anyone who said that there, we take absolutely no pleasure in that. It's just the reality of the situation. But it maybe has taken this long because they did have those years of success. It was only 3 years after that they went on and won the European Cup again. So, since then, there's not been any connection between the two clubs of FC United. There's been no formal link. There's no one reached out, even with fan groups, to be honest, until sort of the recent. You've probably seen the protest that we had at Broadhurst Park last month on the United Day with the 1958 group. They were the first sort of official United fan group who came out in 20 years and reached out to us, and that really means a lot to us. We still consider ourselves Manchester United fans. Certainly 99% of the people who you'll meet at Broadhurst Park will tell you they're a United fan. It's just the case that their support these days is really limited to watching on TV, and that's probably the reality for. There's probably more people who don't go to FC United who their support is also limited to watching on TV these days because they feel that they either can't afford to go to the stadium or it's just no longer for them. So for us, hopefully that is the first step in building those links with the club again, because it was acrimonious in those early days, and I think a lot of that has died down. And that acrimony was really one way. We've never been anti-Manchester United. I think that's probably the thing that's been thrown at us. Oh, you're against Manchester United, and it couldn't be further from the truth. If you come to Broadhurst Park and you see the flags and the banners that are hung up and the songs that are sung, it's a homage to Manchester United. And we had on that United Day sort of a national football journalist who'd come down to report on the day, and we were talking to him, and I think his quote was, I can't understand how anyone could think this is Manchester United. This place is like a shrine to Manchester United. So we have got our own identity and we are our own club, but our history is entirely rooted in that of Manchester United, and we pay respect to that every single week.
Yeah, it's nice to hear that. It's interesting actually, because a few people have asked about the club who are aware of the club. Obviously, they had the same perception of that. FC United Manchester is like a smaller version of Man City now. Surely there's a Manchester derby there if they ever met in the FA Cup or whatever like that. So
City fans hate us. They hate us.
Take that as the biggest compliment.
Oh yeah, they've got one of their online forums. They've got a thread about FC United that runs to hundreds of pages, and none of it's positive.
I'm not even surprised. But just staying away from Manchester United for a minute, and just your own journey. I mean, obviously you're celebrating 20 years now in existence this year. Just talk me briefly through some of the difficulties you've encountered in those years, and some of the positives as well. Because obviously at the start you were rented. Was it from Bury? Was it Gig Lane you were at initially? And then obviously got your own ground in 2015. So talk me through some of the positives and negatives on that journey over the past 20 years.
Yeah, I think the incredible thing was how quickly the club was formed. It was the 12th of May that the Glazer takeover was confirmed, and we played our first friendly game on the 16th of July. First league game, I think it was the 13th of August. So you're talking about forming a football club in less than 3 months. And the steering committee who were involved in doing that did an absolutely remarkable job. One of those big challenges there was finding somewhere to play. There were a few options that we explored around Greater Manchester. The councils, the local authorities in those areas, and some of the clubs were nervous because they couldn't predict how many fans that we would get going to games. And we ended up at Bury because it was the size of the stadium. I think it holds like a 10 or 11,000, something around that, and that's where we ended up, and it served us well for a number of years. It wasn't where we wanted to be. It's a decent place. It's a decent place to watch football, but it's not in Manchester. It's to the north of Manchester, and the goal was always everything was building towards having a place of our own that was in Manchester. So that was the biggest challenge of those 10 years. We had some great times in those 10 years up to that on the pitch. It was sort of the 3 successive promotions. Early on, then we had sort of our famous FA Cup run in 2010, where we got to the first round proper, beat Rochdale away from home. Second round went to Brighton and Hove Albion. We drew 1-1 in that first leg there. I think it was like a 95th minute penalty save from our keeper. Said it got us a replay. We were beaten in the replay, so they were. That was sort of probably the most famous moments for the club. And then sort of the years between 2010 and 2015, that was all about how do we get to this stadium, and it was a challenge. There was one site originally identified closer to the Etihad than we are now, which unfortunately fell through. We moved the council, given us great support, moved to our site where we are now at Broadhurst Park, but there were a lot of challenges around that with the build of it. There's some legal challenges. There's judicial review for everything there, and the delays to that did. It cost us money. It was over budget, and that's been probably the biggest challenge for us ever since. It's great having the stadium. It's a fantastic place to watch football, and we love being there in the community that we are. But it's kind of the difference from gig lane. You're probably that student who's renting a flat somewhere, and it's like you pay your rent, and it's somebody else's responsibility to deal with the pitch and the upkeep of the stadium, and then having your own place is like, it's like being a homeowner with a mortgage. So it's for the level of football that we play at, you'll get a lot of people say it's one of the best stadiums that you'll get, but it costs money to do that. And the reality is, we've struggled with that since, and it's been sort of the last few years has been making sure the club is on a sustainable financial footing. One thing that you get around that it's the playing budget is probably the balancing factor there, and people expect when they see the crowds that we get at the level that we're at that you should be walking the league, because you're getting double the crowds of pretty much anyone else in the league other than Macclesfield, obviously, as a former league club who've reformed and have just won the division. But that's not the reality. We go to away games and talk to the directors of other clubs, and everyone's reasonably open about how much they spend, how much they're spending on players. And we estimate our budget this season, last season, probably in sort of the bottom third of the league, certainly in the bottom half of the league for an overall budget. And that's the reality of where we are with what we can spend, because we're never a club who is going to kind of risk the house on, we're going to try and push a promotion by paying for players that we can't afford. We can't afford the wage bill, and it all comes crumbling down because it'd go against everything that we stood for. So it really is those financial challenges here. Even at non-league, it's not easy to run a football club. I think you speak to sort of directors of any non-league football club, and they'll tell you the same story. But we've still had good moments since then. We obviously 2015, the same year that we moved into Broadhurst Park, we finally got promotion to the Conference North, as it was the 6th tier. I think that was at the 7th attempt or something. We'd had four straight playoff appearances, 3 straight playoff finals that we'd lost, and then so that year we finally got over the line, won the league. That was about a month before Broadhurst Park opened, so we went into we opened Broadhurst Park. That's kind of an off the pitch one, is probably the greatest moment of the club there, somewhere to call our own home. We opened that was the 29th of May 2015, where we hosted a Benfica under 23 side, which was really symbolic to us. It was actually on the anniversary of United winning the European Cup in 1968. So Benfica sent the side over. So we opened the ground in the Conference North. We did survive there for 3 seasons. Unfortunately relegated in 2019. 2019-20, we were second in the league. Probably a good shot for the playoffs again when the COVID pandemic hit. So the season was cancelled, so we never got a chance to do that. And it has been a struggle since COVID. There, we're seeing sort of wage inflation across non-league as you are in the football league. So we're still plugging away with things, and it's we do have some good moments. We do have some good results. We've not been challenging at that top end of the league. Sort of kind of on the pitch, great moments we've had the last few years. We've been involved in a competition called the Phoenix Trophy, which has been I think it's been termed the Champions League for non-league, which I think is a bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's it's a competition for non-league sort of fan-owned community clubs across Europe that we've been in since the first season. And it's given a really good opportunity. It's certainly for those of us who Manchester United fans and used to travelling around Europe watching United in Europe. It's been like a little bit of a throwback. We've been to Italy and Spain, France, Czech Republic, Germany, Montenegro. So it's been good for that. We've even had the chance to play. We played in the San Siro with the finals 2 years ago. Were hosted in the San Siro, so that's quite a novelty one. I think the last time I was in the San Siro was in March, April 2005, when United were playing Milan in the European Cup. So to go back there sort of 18 years later with FC United was quite bizarre.
Very symbolic. No, in fairness, but you're dead right, because when you look at the amount of clubs that are going kind of bust or are near that red line, I mean, it's not even exclusive to non-league clubs. I mean, you look at the PSR regulations that are brought in now, and and clubs are literally counting their pennies, and these are clubs that are making hundreds of millions of pounds a year. So, like, I mean, that financial factor is definitely important. And like you said, looking at those player packages, everyone can't be a Wrexham and have this big fancy Hollywood superstars coming over and buy them out and just jump up the football league. But yeah, that probably brings you nicely onto the next point, because I just had a quick look on your website, and you have a nice manifesto there on the club website, and I know it's very fan oriented, and it's nice, it's refreshing to see that in this day and age. But then I was kind of looking at it and thinking, so if you guys have a 5 to 10 year plan and hopefully climb the football league and start making more money, I mean, how feasible do you think it is then to stick to a manifesto like that when greater amounts of money are involved potentially? So say if everything goes well for you guys and you find yourself in the top end of League Two, bottom end of League One in about 10 or 15 years' time, is it feasible, do you think, to still maintain that fan-oriented ethos when so much money is involved?
I think we'd probably look at it the other way, that we'll go as high up the leagues as our principles allow us to do. So it's, I think if we got to, you're talking about getting to League One or League Two, I think we'd settle for certainly getting out of this division to start with. But people, FC United means different things to different people. People have got different red lines, so there's things that probably make us unique. One of those is we don't have a shirt sponsor. That's something that's in our rules. It's been voted in by the fans. The fans can change that. It's in their hands if we go a few years down the line, and it's having that discussion. We as a board, we're realistic. I think everyone's behind that, but the realism behind it is, okay, well, look, you're not talking hundreds of thousands of pounds to have a shirt sponsor at this level, but you're not getting whatever money you're getting from that, right? We've got to find that money from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So who knows? In a few years, you might get, as we get older, you get newer fans in there that they've got different views. That's probably the beauty of the club. It's 100% fan owned, and it's in the hands of the fans. I think certainly for me, probably for most, our red line is that 100% fan owned piece. We have been since day one, and I can't see any scenario in the foreseeable future where that would change. Some clubs have gone different ways. So AFC Wimbledon, they started out as 100% fan owned. They've allowed outside investment over the last few years. Absolutely no criticism of them. They're a great club. We've had a great relationship with them. I think with FC United, when we were started, AFC Wimbledon's chairman at the time, Chris Stewart, he was travelling up to Manchester multiple times a week on his own money to come and advise us and help us out. So
very good.
That's the route that they've chosen to go down, and if that's right for them, then that's great. I think for us, it's so rooted in our identity that we are 100% fan owned. That won't change. That comes with the challenges of, look, if you've got a rich businessman who's willing to come and sponsor us or donate some money and doesn't really want anything in return, that's great. We'll take that within kind of ethical considerations. But the reality, the way the club's set up, you pay £25 a year for your membership, and that's what you get. You get one share in the club. We've probably seen the news recently that Evie Cantona's joined us as a member a couple of weeks ago. He's the same as everyone else. He pays his £25 and he gets one share in the club. No one can own more than one share,
yes,
no matter how much money they put into it. So for us, that's the way we're set up. I don't see that change, and I don't think there's any appetite from the vast majority of our members, our co-owners, for that to change. So that's probably the limiting factor there of, well, we're not in a position there where we can sell a portion of the club to gain the revenue that the likes of someone like Wrexham or Salford City have. That's going to be the limiting factor for us. So it's about, well, what do we achieve on the pitch within those bounds? And if that's League One, then that would be, to me, it seems remarkable from where we are now.
Yeah.
But certainly climbing those leagues, and for us, that success is, it's going as high as we can in the football pyramid, while staying true to the principles and staying true to what makes FC United what it is as a club.
Yeah, no, and it's refreshing. It's refreshing to see that in this day and age, because
there are bits of it that people like the non-league match day experience. So you come down to FC United or any other club at this level there, and as long as your local council allows it, you can go in the bar, get a pint, and you can stand on the terrace and have a drink and while you're watching your team.
Yeah.
There's probably some of our fans who would say, actually, I think it's when you get to sort of National League level, you can't do that under the law. So you
Sure.
get some of our fans saying, "Oh, actually, I don't want to be in the National League because I quite enjoy having a pint." You speak to some of our fans, and some of them would say, "Oh, I'd quite happily go back to the Northwest Counties days, the 10th and the 9th tier where we started because they had such a good time." I mean, it's probably not realistic for us financially, given the stadium we've got and what we need to do, and there's probably some of that is a bit of nostalgia. I was 19 when the club was started, and those away days where we were going all over and drinking all day is probably slightly different when you're 40 and you've got to deal with the hangovers. So there's probably a bit of nostalgia for those old days, but it just comes with growing older.
Absolutely, yeah. No, look, it's nice though. It's nice to see that because, like that, like you said there, if you do start moving away from that model that actually ultimately founded the club, who's to say that in 20 years' time you don't find yourself in a similar situation again, where you're kind of combating a wealthy owner who's coming in to try and take over the club that you founded on certain principles, and now it's going out the window. So like it's refreshing to see, and it's a nice ethos to have, especially in this day and age. But like, I mean, you look at the football league as a whole now, and there's a lot more. And this isn't just singling out American owners; it just seems to be becoming more prevalent now, especially in the Premier League. These big money owners coming from America with the idea of American football franchises in their head. We saw the idea of the Super League a few years back floated and that sort of thing. So you see these kind of more expensive match day experiences coming into the Premier League now, where the likes of what you touched on earlier on, generational season ticket holders are kind of been pushed out now for these wealthy corporate experiences. The owners don't care so much about fans anymore. They say they do, but ultimately we know they don't. Do you see a world in which there's more breakaway clubs like yourselves forming, like say for example out of a Liverpool or an Arsenal or something? Do you see a world in which you see more of these kind of breakaway clubs happen purely because they've been pushed out by these wealthy owners?
I think so. I think that's probably more realistic than some of the talk of being able to get clubs like Manchester United or Arsenal or City or whoever to a place where the fans have got a real say in it. There's talk at the moment of the independent football regulator coming in England and what difference that will make, and will that give it? There's great talk about it giving a say to fans. Probably got a number of opinions I could have on that, but the reality is football at the top level is probably so far gone and so far removed from making that a reality. It just doesn't seem possible. So I think you probably will see more of that. And there are other examples away from us. I think Arsenal do have one. I think they're called Dial Square. I'm not sure what level they play. They're probably not caught on in the same way as FC United have. There is a City of Liverpool FC who are they're kind of there. They play in purple. It's kind of colours of the City of Liverpool, and their ethos has sort of been, oh well, we're a club there for whether you're Liverpool or you're Everton. That if you want a non-league football experience, and they've got their own identity of being Scousers, of this is what we believe we stand for as Scousers. We've played them in friendlies and so on there, and they're a good bunch. So you are seeing it. You're probably not seeing it necessarily catch on in the same way that FC United has, but it seems like the only way that you can make that a reality of getting the fans to have a voice. If you're not going to be able to do it at the Premier League level, then it is something where you're looking at doing a breakaway or a reform of a club. We've seen that with Bury FC. They went under a few years ago, and it's been challenging for them because it sort of limped on as a ghost club for a while there, but a number of their fans broke away, started what was AFC Bury. They've now come back together. They're back in Gig Lane. It is the big thing for them, and they're doing well. I think they should win their league this weekend. They actually played at Broadhurst Park, and it was a nice little, probably go a little bit off topic here, but our first season we played a team called Cheadle Town, who were from Stockport, not too far from Manchester. And that first season with our crowds, I think we only played 3 away games at the actual home ground of the club where they actually played, because of the crowds. We played all over. We played at Bloomfield Road, Blackpool, we played at Accrington, Oldham Athletic 3 times, Port Vale, and so on. But we played Cheadle Town at Edgeley Park at Stockport's ground, and yeah, it was interesting while we were playing at Gig Lane for our home games at the time, and it came round this year. Cheadle Town are in Bury's division, and they played last Saturday for Bury's away game at Cheadle Town, and they had the chance to seal the league, and Cheadle Town's ground couldn't hold it, so they actually rented Broadhurst Park. So it was a kind of a really weird about turn after 20 years of sort of the teams that were back in played big parts in our history back then. Yeah, came to our ground, but yeah, there's a place there for the fans. You know, Bury are doing things their way. You've seen other clubs reform. You know, Macclesfield's got a different way. They're obviously Macclesfield Town, who went under. They've reformed lower down. They've not gone down the fan owned route, but they're getting great crowds in this division. They've won the league, so they're going to be in the sixth tier. But you are seeing it, and sometimes you've got to find that there's teams left with no option. You know, Blythe Spartans, everyone heard of, a great historic club, FA Cup giant killers. They were relegated to our division last year. Dodgy owner, the dodgy owner came in, and they've been relegated again this year. The fans have just about managed to get him out. They've sort of reformed as a community interest company there, but it was too late for them to survive relegation again, 2 straight relegations, and they're now down in the eighth tier. And from talk, we've played them at Broadhurst Park a couple of months ago, and we're talking to sort of the people who've got involved from the fans of doing it there, and it was very much touch and go of whether that club was going to survive with the history that they've got, and they're one of them non-league clubs that everyone's heard of. So if it can happen, it's not just happening in the Football League with these dodgy owners. I think there's that much money flowing around the Football League. Some of these dodgy owners can't even afford, say, a League Two club these days, but they still want this perceived prestige of, I'm a football club owner. And they're even going down to the 6th and the 7th tiers there and ruining and nearly killing these clubs. And you'll talk about why, should the government be involved? And, the independent football regulator, if it's a reality, the way it's set up, it won't even come down to this level. And that's unfortunate, because there's clubs at this level also need that protection. Just because a club's got 200 fans, it's no less important to those fans than a club like Manchester United or Arsenal or Liverpool are to the hundreds of thousands, millions of fans that they've got. It's just on a different scale. But for that person who that club's a massive part of their life, they deserve that same level of protection. And yeah, there is more and more risk of that, certainly this level of non-league, with clubs chasing success, trying to climb the leagues. And they might have seen what Wrexham have done or what Salford have done, but the kind of money that Wrexham have spent, and again, there's no criticism to them if that's what's worked for them. And Wrexham's a great old football club, and it's a town that deserves, you say deserves that success, but that's worked out for them. But the kind of money that they can spend is on a totally different level to what some people are probably coming into our level and thinking, I can buy my way up into the Football League. It's so far removed from that these days, and that protection is needed from bad owners doing that. And if that protection is not there, you're going to see clubs going to the wall, and the only option that fans are going to have is either to reform them or break away.
Yeah, you're spot on. It's like a great reset in many ways, because I think, like you said, football is just going down a road now where it's unrecognisable. I mean, obviously, Manchester United have their own problems at the moment, which is obvious, and it's a pain watching them at the moment. But if you look at football, I think as a whole across continental Europe, it's not the same spectacle it was 20 years ago. I think the coaching has gone too far now. The fun has been coached out of the game. The instinct has been coached out of the game. There's too much money. You see the prices that have been quoted for players now in the top level. Like, you barely buy a Premier League footballer, no matter how good, now for less than 50 million quid. I mean, it's just diluted. And like you said, I think that kind of reset is needed to nearly start the club all over again, because fans certainly aren't been listening to it at most of these top level clubs anymore. And look, it's a shame. But just moving back to Manchester United for a minute, obviously Jim Ratcliffe is in there now. He's in bed with the Glazers, which wasn't an ideal situation for most Manchester United fans. What have you made so far of the club under Ratcliffe? I mean, a lot of cutbacks, a lot of people losing their jobs, rumours of more people losing their jobs. Yet you see these players and they're still on £350,000 a week. But Ratcliffe thinks by cutting staff lunches that he's saving the club money. What do you think of the overall scene there at the club since he's come in?
I think Jim Ratcliffe's in a tough spot, but he's put himself in that tough spot. It is where it's come from, and he's not going to get. There's probably to a certain extent the Glazers got the benefit of the doubt a little bit. It was some of the wait and see, and I think people have seen 20 years on what the Glazers have done there, and Ratcliffe's not going to get that same grace period. He seen, for many, probably seemed like the best option at the time. Of people have got reservations over kind of some of this state ownership that we've seen with Manchester City and Newcastle there, and I think there were probably a lot of United fans said, "Well, we don't want to be just another plaything like that." So Ratcliffe came in and he made the right noises to start with, and then you've seen some of the decisions that have been made, and I'm not saying they're all right. I'm not saying they're all wrong. It's but some of them, as you say, seem strange. I think there's the thing about cutting staff lunches, whatever you think of that. Is that going to make the difference? But then there was the thing of cutting it was £40,000 a year that they donate to the Association of Former Manchester United Players, and that's not looking after the likes of Ryan Giggs or Paul Scholes and David Beckham. These are some of the guys who were probably playing in the 60s and 70s, and there wasn't the money there, and it's like the bad publicity that they got out of that for the sake of saving £40,000 a year with the money that Manchester United brings in. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, the Glazers must love Ratcliffe because he's just become the lightning rod for everything. And the reality is that all of these problems go back to the Glazers. United are they're paying £100,000 a day in interest payments on the Glazer debt. And you think of what that adds up to over the course of a year and what that could pay for. So, Jim Ratcliffe saying, "Oh, I've got to make these tough decisions," and I'm sure there are some tough decisions there. But I think the more you listen to some of the stuff he's coming out with, the more it doesn't add up. And I think there's a lot of questions that Jim Ratcliffe still has to answer. I mean, he did that media blitz, was it about 2 months ago, something like that, 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, where he was doing his interviews there, and there was a lot of stuff came out, and he probably got quite a bit of sympathy for that. He did come across quite well in that, but people then probably forget. It's like, well, hang on a minute, this guy's worth 20 billion, 25 billion, or whatever he's worth. He's not, he's not just some old man investing in his local football club, as much as he likes to tell that story of, I grew up watching, I grew up in Failsworth and I grew up watching United. He's a. I think you've got to be certain level of ruthlessness to get the kind of money that he's got. And when you read some of the stuff he came out with in those interviews about, the club would have run out of money by December and so on. There's bits of it that don't add up. There's, JP O'Neill, former Red Issue editor, he did a sort of a 99 questions thing on his Substack a few weeks ago of asking some of these really pertinent questions of, well, if that's the case and the club, you did your due diligence and the club was at the risk of going under like that, why did you pay the Glazers a massive premium on what the shares were trading at on the New York Stock Exchange? It doesn't stack up in it. He's cast doubt on whether the Qatari bid ever existed. And it's again, well, if you're saying that you don't believe that bid ever existed, you've again paid a massive premium over on those shares. And he did get some challenge in those interviews, and I think he used the phrase, it's a forest of numbers or so on. And it's like, well, no, this just doesn't ring true of someone who's worth the amount of money that he's done there, of claiming that, I've gone through this process of doing due diligence and now I've come in and it doesn't, it's not what I thought it was. There is some challenge with him of, I think there's in the legal agreement for when he bought the shares off the Glazers, I think he's legally barred from publicly disparaging them or criticising them, which, look, I can understand it from his point of view. If that's a legal agreement, and it's not what the fans want to hear. They need some truth in that. And I think the closest he's got to that was, I think it was the BBC interview that he did where he used the phrase Manchester United has come off the rails. It's like, well, there's only been one set of people who've been at the wheel of the train for the last 20 years, and that's been Malcolm Glazer and his family.
Yeah.
So it's something's got to break with it, because he, I wouldn't say I feel sorry for him because he's put himself in this situation,
Mm.
but it is him who is now getting all of the criticism for what ultimately goes back to decisions that the Glazers have made over the years. These are people who've made an absolute mint out of Manchester United without putting a penny into it between dividends and share sales and so on. And he's put himself in that position. And if he's not willing or he's not able to come out and say what needs to be said about the Glazers, then he's unfortunately going to continue facing that criticism until it gets to the point where he does feel like he can say something. But I think a lot of people really saw through the fact that it was it sort of Monday or Sunday or Monday that he did all those media interviews. He did the one with Gary Neville and the one with the BBC,
Mm.
and then the very following day, it's this announcement about, oh, we're going to build a new stadium, and it's, yeah, obviously there's quite the interesting one there with Gary Neville doing the interview with him one day, and then when you watch that video, it's Gary Neville doing the voiceover on the
That's
new
right. Yeah.
stadium video, and it's
Yeah.
that comes back to the same point we're making about the number of unanswered questions. Because if the club's in as parlous a financial state as claimed, and we know the situation with the Glazer debt, that within 2 years a lot of that is maturing and they're going to have to refinance it one way or another.
Yeah.
Where's the money coming from for
Yeah.
they're talking about £2 billion to build this new stadium, and it's going to be ready in 5 years. I mean, that's so far from reality. Anyone can get, if you've got the money, you can get Norman Foster and Partners to come up with this grand master plan of, look how good this stadium's going to look, and you can see how much it's been inspired by some of the sort of the new NFL stadiums
Mm-hmm.
in the
Yeah.
USA. Sort of SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. The similarities are striking, apart from the weather, obviously.
Yeah.
But there's no way that's going to be a reality in 5 years, and there's no answers to the questions of how that's going to be funded. And the question that a lot of Manchester United fans are going to be asking in the meantime is, well, we've all seen the state that Old Trafford's been in over the last couple of years. The famous pictures of the water pouring through the roof and all the other issues there. And if you're a season ticket holder at Manchester United, so even if it is 5 years, what are we just going to sit here and face, the stadium, a great asset, a historic asset like
Mm.
Old Trafford that's been there for over 100 years, just allowed to crumble until something happens? So, yeah, I think Jim Ratcliffe, he maybe bought himself some time with those interviews, but the questions are starting to mount up again for him.
Yeah, I agree, and like I admire his honesty. Like you said, due to legal agreements, I think he was about as honest as he possibly could be without breaching that legal line. I just think it's fascinating that he paid what he did to take over footballing operations, but yet he's there making layoffs, and look, he seems to be looking after the entire club now, despite only owning 27%. And the Glazers are set over in America, and they're literally laughing because they're not getting the flack anymore. As you said, it's all coming down on Jim Ratcliffe because he's making these difficult decisions. And yeah,
Well, I think it is the interesting one with Jim Ratcliffe as well. I mean, you look at some of his sporting history and his sporting interests there. I think he's thought of as a success there, but it's, there's been issues at Nice in the
yeah,
past, and obviously he bought Team Sky Cycling,
yeah,
rebranded him as Ineos, and they've been a success for many years, and I think they've probably been caught up by other people. He's put something like £250 million into trying to build a boat to win the America's Cup, and that doesn't
yes, yeah,
seem to be any closer
yeah,
to achieving it. So he's made the right noises there, bringing Dave Brailsford in and so on, but it's not been a particularly great start. There was a whole with Eric Ten Hag last summer of, oh, we're going to give him a new contract, and then you sack him, and then you bring in Dan Ashworth, and then
yeah,
you let pay money for that, and let him go, and you brought in the new manager in Amorim, and look, you can't pin any of the club's current league position,
no,
any of the problems on Ruben Amorim. It's the situation he's inherited, and it seems to be, I think it was rumored, one of the things that Dan Ashworth said was, well, you bring in you're sacking, you've got players who are set up to play an Eric Ten Hag system, and then you bring in a new manager with those players who's got a totally different system. Oh, and by the way, he's not really got any money to spend in the January transfer window to do anything about it. So, he's come into a bad situation. I think he's a good manager, but
yeah,
you've seen over the last few years it's been dysfunctional. It's been, think of how long Alex Ferguson was there and how long Matt Busby was at the club, and how few managers United have had in their history, and they've become they become another club with managers coming in and out, and there's a certain bit with it of, all right, fair enough, Louis van Gaal's coming to the end of his career, and maybe a lot of modern advancements have passed him by. But if you've got the likes of Van Gaal and Mourinho and Ralph Rangnick are all saying the same things, and none of them can make it work, then there's clearly fundamental problems there behind the scenes that, until they're fixed, you wonder how anyone makes a success of it.
Yeah, and like that, you touched on it there with Dan Ashworth. It looked like we were kind of getting somewhere towards setting the club down in terms of giving it a one unified sporting direction last summer, and then 4 or 5 months later, he seems to have kind of rubbed Jim up the wrong way. I don't think they're seeing eye to eye on a personal level, and that's what it sounded like. He's out the door now as a result of that, and the club is kind of, I wouldn't say back to square one, because I think they have brought in some good people, but yeah, like a long way to go. And like you said there, feck all money to put behind the cause. So yeah, look, it's an interesting one. Look, before we finish up, Paul, I noticed on your website as well that you guys have a Legends game. FC United of Manchester playing the MUFC Legends on the, let me see, I have it here, the 18th of May. Yeah, the 20th anniversary celebrations.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we're going to be celebrating sort of the 20th anniversary over the summer and into the start of next season, because it's also the 10th anniversary of Broadhurst Park. But this is, it's kind of a real keynote bit of this, that we wanted a special game to celebrate with, and we were fortunate enough to secure the Legends team. So it should be a really good day. If anyone's around Manchester wants to come down, the tickets are available. So it is, great experience for FC United fans, because some of our legends who we've been fortunate enough to watch over the years. But there's some great United players that United are sending. Wes Brown, David May. I'm sure David May will be doing some fantastic celebrations if he scores or they win. That's reminiscent of some of his ones in the 90s. So, I think that some of the lineup still being confirmed on that. Hopefully some more big names to announce. I think it's unlikely, although Eric Cantona has become a co-owner of FC United, I think it's unlikely that he's got to feature for either side. But should be a great day out. Any Manchester United fans from Manchester, or you happen to be in Manchester that weekend and you're at a loose end, come down. You'll have a good day out. You can watch some football, have a pint on the terraces, and meet some fellow United fans and have a good sing-song all day.
Yeah, enjoy football the old-fashioned way. Look, Paul, thanks very much for coming on again. Like we said backstage, it's been months in the making, so hopefully it lived up to the hype. But look, we might get you on again, mate, at some point again in the future. Yeah. And look, we'll keep in touch. But look, as it is for now, thanks for hopping on. Thanks everyone for watching. We will have, I think, another show on Saturday, but keep an eye on our socials. But for now, thank you so much for watching. Cheers.